Today you're watching a demonstration on how to create this little wirework Christmas tree ring. It's a very simple little design, very effective. It involves a bit of weaving and some spiraling to make this really effective little festive ring. So before we start, I'll talk you through what we're going to need. We're going to need some 1mm or 0.8mm wire for the main ring shank, and then to do the decorations on top of the ring. I've chosen a green just because it's a Christmas tree, but you can go whatever colour you like. And then I've got some 0.4mm wire, and that's going to be for doing our weaving and wrapping and securing all the wires together. And then you're going to need some sort of little crystal or star or bead for the top of your tree. Completely optional, of course, but it just finishes it off. So I've chosen some 0.4 Swarovski bicones here to do my little tree topper. In terms of tools, you need your basic toolkit. So you're going to need some snipe nose pliers or flat nose pliers, whichever you're more comfortable with. You're also going to need some cutters to cut your wires with. You're going to need some round nose pliers. They're going to help us make the spirals. And you'll also need a ring mandrel. If you haven't got a ring mandrel, then you can also use a pen or something similar just to make a finger-shaped ring for your finished piece. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we need to cut ourselves 3 lengths of our 8mm wire, or not 0.8mm wire, and then depending on you can use your 1mm wire if you want to, but I'm using 0.8, and we're going to go for around 9 inches per length. So we want 3 lengths of that. So 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to use our 0.4 wire to create a weave along these wires. Now we want our weave to sit centrally in these wires, but because of the nature of the weave, it means that we can draw our wires through the weave. So if you feel more comfortable or more able to weave at the ends, towards the ends of the wires, then please do, because you can always slide the wires individually through your weave to position it where you want it. So I'm going to take some 0.4 wire. You can leave the wire on the reel if you prefer, because you don't know how much you're going to need, and there's no threading in and out, so you can keep it on the reel if you choose. So to start this weave, I'm going to take the end of my wire, I'm going to bring it up to the 0.8mm, one of the 0.8mm wires, and I'm going to just slip. This is basically just to secure it. Leave yourself a tail just in case you need it later. And I'm going to wrap I'm going to go twice just on this first one, just to help it stay in place. So twice around the wire, and keep that nice and pinched up close together. Then we're going to bring in our second wire. I'm going to lay it parallel to our first and take the 0.4 wire that we've just wrapped around the other and wrap it once around that wire too. And if you notice, I'm pushing that down so that it's nice and tight. If you find it's a bit loose, you can always just rock the wire back and forth, up and down like this, and it sort of tightens it in around the wires. We then take our third wire and we add that in alongside, again parallel with the other wires, and then take the 0.4 wire again and wrap it around just that one wire that you've added in, and give it a good pull so it's nice and tight. You should have what looks like you've got your first wires which are tied in. I'll bring that nice and close for you. Your first wires, that's where you've anchored in, and then you've wrapped once around the other 2 wires. We're now going to go back up the wires, wrapping them again. This time we come over the top, we come over 2 wires, down in between, and then back up. And so what we're doing is we're just wrapping this wire. So we've literally come around that wire. Now we're going to wrap this wire. So we're going to come over the top of that wire and around it. And again, make sure that it's all pulled in nice and tight. And you should have this. It sort of forms like a zigzag effect when you're doing this weave. But when you scotch it up nice and tight, it almost looks like a knit Okay, so I'm going to do that again, coming back down. So now we're going to wrap, we've just wrapped this one, so now it's this one's turn. I'm going to bring the wire up so that we can wrap it. So we've brought it up, we're going to go all the way around it, push it in nice and firm, and then we're going to wrap this one. So we're going to come down all the way around it and push it up nice and firm. Okay, so one more time, and then I'm going to move on to one I've completed. So we're going to come up and over the two, just so that we can wrap this one, wrap that one, over and round and over. And you can see how when you get a bit faster, how the action that your hands make goes. So if I show you that now from a bit further back, you might be able to see how my hands actually work. So through, round and down, pull, through, round, down, pull, and then over to the top, pull, pull, over, pull. And once you get used to this weave, it's really quick and it builds really quickly. So just another little look at what that looks like close up. Wait for the camera to catch up with the focus. Come on, camera. Can we see? Oh, it's not focusing very quickly, is it? A little bit closer. A bit further back maybe. Maybe I'm a bit too close. There we go, that's better, isn't it? So you can see the weave and how it looks now. So if I'm just going to bring in one that I've done the whole length of the shank for. So you can see here I've woven this section here for the ring, and that is just about how long a section I need for my ring shank. Now that's about, let's measure it, we've got about 2 inches, I would imagine. Yeah, roughly 2 inches of weave. Now, of course, depending on how big your ring is, you may need to weave more or less. I'm going to bring that up to my ring mandrel now. I'm going to shape that around the mandrel. So I'm going to come down to roughly an N. Where are we here? About an N. And don't worry about the wires crossing over. We just want them to come around, and we're looking for that weave to sort of be level, so sort of meet at the top there. Okay, and then once I know that that's about right, I can remove that. I'm going to take my flat nose pliers. I'm going to take all 3 wires from one side, and I'm going to hold them really firmly with my pliers, and I'm going to twist those wires upwards so that they're pointing up. Okay, and slightly back on themselves, like so. And I'll do the same with the other side. So get my weaving wires out the way. By the way, don't cut off your weaving wire. Keep a nice long length. Once you finish weaving the shank, don't cut it off. Keep a nice long length. We're going to work with that to help join the 2 sides of the ring together. So then I'm going to put my pliers on again, level with the finish of that weave, and I'm going to turn. So I'm pushing against my finger when I turn so that I get a nice sharp bend upwards. Okay, so we should end up with something that looks a little bit like that. Okay, and now what we're going to do is use the tail, this tail that we've been working with, and we're going to use it to combine the 2 sides together. So each of these tails of the 0.8 wire, or 0.1 if you're working with 1 mil wire, if you're working with 1 mil, you're going to take the wire in between them and bind them together. So I'm binding around those 2 to the next one, and bind around those 2 as well. Excuse my springy wire, it's getting in the way. Cut some off. So we come around those 2, then the middle 2, and we'll put them really tight because we really want to cinch them together so that they're nice and firm. And then we're going to go around to the last 2 and cinch those together as well. So around those as well. Okay. So they're nice and firm together. You could, if you feel it's a bit loose still, you can come back round and do them all again, just to make doubly sure that that's all nice and tight. Okay, so I can now, that's nice and secure now. I'm quite confident that that's not going to go anywhere. So I'm going to spread these wires nice and flat, and I'm going to start putting on the detail. So I can trim off that shorter wire now. I'm going to trim that one off. I'm going to leave this bit of tail here just in case I need to attach anything, but also at the end I can use this little piece here to attach my gemstone to the tip of my tree. So I'm now going to arrange my wires. So what I've got in this ring here, if we bring that back to have a look at, we'll see that we've got one spiral at the top, 2 spirals on the next row, and 3 at the bottom. So we're going to arrange our wires now to sort of mimic that. So we want 1 wire that's going to be at the top, 2 wires for the middle row, so those can splay out either side, and 3 for the bottom row, so we can splay those out too. Okay, and now we're just going to spiral them. So we're going to start with the bottom row and spiral 3 in there. Now these wires are too long, so what we're going to do is we're going to chop them down so that our bottom ones are roughly 1.5 inches long each. Okay, so trim them all to the same length, roughly 1.5 inches each. The bigger you leave them, the bigger your tree will be. Okay, then these next ones we want slightly shorter because we want to decrease the size of the spirals as we go up. So only slightly shorter, just go for about 1/4 inch shorter, okay? So, and let's make them the same. Okay. Put those back, and then the top one again a little bit shorter, so take it down to measure it against the last one, make it a bit shorter. Right, so now we're going to spiral each. So I'm going to start with the bottom. Let's move these tools out of the way. And we're going to spiral each of these in. So I'm going to start with the 2 on the outside at the bottom. So I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to take the very tip of the wire with the very tip of my pliers, and I'm going to just spiral that in. So spirals are one of those things that take a bit of practice, but once you've got them, they're the most useful little technique to have. So as you see there, I started my spiral off with my round nose pliers to get that shape, but then once I've got a spiral started, I then take hold of the spiral with my flat nose pliers and roll it in. Okay, so we're going to leave that about there. We can always come in and shorten it a bit. You can see I've got a bit of a tail, because remember our middle spiral is going to sit sort of here. So we'll do the same on the other side, and I'm going to spiral in the opposite direction for this one. So where this one's going this way, I'm going to spiral the other one the opposite way. So tip of the pliers onto the tip of the wire, and then I generally start by using my thumb to sort of help me keep the wire tight to the jaws of the pliers whilst I turn. Okay, so I'll start and then turn. Once I've got so far, I can no longer go any further with my round nose pliers. I'm then going to take my flat and roll it in. And as you get used to this, you get much quicker. So I'm going to do those, and I'm going to position that one off to the side. And let's have it slightly lower as well. So the middle row we want sort of resting roughly on the ring shank. Okay, so the lower row is going to be just below the ring shank. So I can see I need to roll those in a little bit more. So now we'll do the middle one. And now it's up to you which direction you do the middle one, because obviously we can't do it like a mirror image because it's a standalone one. So start the spiral off and then roll it in. This one we're going to do a little bit different because we don't want to see, because it's in the middle, we don't want to see where the spiral started. So I'm rolling that in. And then I'm going to just kink it so that it sits centrally like that. And then I'm going to take hold of it and I'm going to flip it over. Okay, so that then that sits in between those 2 other spirals and hides the middle. So you can see I'm just rolling those in a bit so that it all works together. And that one sits just there. Now we need these 2 on either side. So again, another set of spirals. So holding on to the end, start that spiral, roll it in, flat nose pliers, and roll, roll, roll. Okay, keep rolling. And again, this is where we don't want to see the stalk then of the spiral. So when you get to where it's nearly in position, just lift it slightly. You see, I just slight lift so that when I roll it down, it covers the stem of the spiral. All right, so it's just hiding behind. So again, we'll do the same on the other side. Pliers to the tip, roll in the spiral. Take your flat nose pliers and roll it into position. And again, as we did before, just to hide the stalk, this little bit here, just lift it slightly on that last rotation so that it just hides it. Okay, I'm going to adjust that one a little bit. It seems to be not in the right place. Okay, so there's our middle row, and now it's the top spiral. So the last one, wire onto the tip and spiral this down. And the same as before, we don't want to show the stem there, so when you get to about there where it's nearly finished, let it lift slightly and roll it on top so that it sits and you can't see. So here we go, here's our 3 rows of spirals to create the triangle shape. And now we're going to add a little bead to the top, so that little bit of wire that we had remaining, we can then bring up. We're going to thread it through the back of that spiral. So if I turn it over, you see where the stem of that spiral is. And basically we just want to anchor this somewhere where it's towards the top of the tree. So you may come, depending on how big your spirals were or how loose they were, you may be you may actually be on the spiral rather than on at the back of it. So there's your wire there. We're gonna now attach in our little crystal, which I should have had out ready, but I didn't. Let's see if I can get one out without spilling the whole pack. There we go. Nope. And then just take your 0.4 wire, add on the little crystal to there, and then I just pull that wire down the back and wrap it around itself a few times. So just wrap it around underneath the crystal there, so it takes a bit of holding on to. Just a couple of wraps around, that should hold it in place. Orientate it so that the wrapping is at the back. And then to finish that wire, you can either just cut it off there if you like, because that would be fine. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. If you don't feel safe doing that, you can bring the wire back down into the ring shank and sort of wrap it away underneath. But that will be about right. So then all that's left to do now is it's come out of shape a little bit where we've been working on it. So you just pop it back onto your mandrel, give it a bit of a, manipulate it a bit so that it all sits nicely. Scritch up your spirals. Get them all neat. And there is your little Christmas tree ring. So there he is, all ready to wear for Christmas dinner perhaps. Maybe you can make a larger version and make them into napkin rings. They'd be lovely. So we bring this one in as well. There's another variation there. The spirals are a little bit bigger and fatter on that one. But that's how you do your Christmas tree ring. So happy making, hope you enjoy. Don't forget to share your makes and creations.